Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Public Speaking and Business Podcast, where purpose meets passion, and every conversation is a chance to educate, empower, and elevate. I'm your host, Dr. Samantha DeLoache, and today marks something truly special. We're launching a new chapter of our podcast, in-person interviews where individuals get to own their voice and share their story in their own words. These are real conversations with real people who are walking through life with courage, resilience, and purpose. And for our inaugural episode, I'm honored to sit down with someone who embodies all of that, Mr. Ernest Jefferson. Ernest was recently diagnosed with prostate cancer, and today he's here to share his journey, his strength, and what he's learning along the way. Ernest, welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself to our audience.
Well, thank you, Samantha. It's great seeing you again, and thank you for the opportunity. So, yes, my name is Ernest Jefferson Jr. I am from Greenville, South Carolina, and professionally, I work in the business arena. I'm a business professional in corporate America. I've been in management for about 30 years. Outside of my profession, I am very active in ministry in multiple areas. I wear many hats, not only at my local church, but in other areas as well that I support. And I also am so passionate about giving back to my community. So I lead in various and volunteer my time to various civic organizations, just to name a few. I'm on the board of directors for Heart of Compassion in Greenville. For the last decade, I have served with an organization called Circles, and it helps empowers families to exit poverty. And we equip them and empower them with the tools and resources that they need to make a better life for them and their families. And certainly recently I joined 100 Black Men of the Upstate, because this is helping our young Black men who are coming up behind us to own their voice and to develop into the men that we want them to be the future leaders that we need them to be. And when I'm not doing all of that, I'm certainly an outdoors person. I love hiking. I love spending quality time with family and friends. And like you, Dr. DeLoache, I love domestic and international travel.
Oh, yes. Okay. Well, that is excellent. You definitely don't let dirt stick on your legs or your
Not at all.
shoes. You keep it moving.
Yes.
Wow. So what has been your approach to your own personal fitness, health, and wellness?
Yes. So I would like to think that I have always been, since my 30s in particular, a person who's dedicated to health, wellness, and fitness. I've volunteered my time with local hospital association to bring awareness, especially in the minority community, about things that we need to do to protect our health and to be advocates for our own health. But also personally, I think in my 30s, one of the things I started doing was getting serious about my workouts, because from the age of about 32 to 35, my waistline was matching my age. And I was like, okay, this needs to stop.
Right.
So I got serious, started hitting the gym, and been dedicated to that for about 20 years. And, definitely try to watch what I eat and be healthy. But like I said, I love playing sports. Do any number of, sports. I'm a tennis player, a basketball player, volleyball, and I played in leagues. I go to parks and stuff, and I love hiking. I absolutely love hiking. If those of you that follow me on social media, you will often see that I'm a chasing waterfalls. So I love to hike and see a waterfall. If I go on a hike and I don't see a waterfall, I'm very much disappointed. But all those things, keep me healthy and well, and keep me fit. And another thing is that also since my 30s, and I can thank my late grandmother for this, I regularly see my doctor.
Okay.
And I, a lot of men were known not to go to the doctor. I'm not like that. I go to all of my appointments, and what they tell me to do, I do it. They prescribe me something, I take it. And so because I want to be the best version of myself, and I can't do all these other areas that I operate in if I don't have good personal health and wellness.
Well, wow. So you definitely stay very active, and that's excellent. And so that kind of, leads into the next question. We often hear that men don't like to go to the doctor.
Yes.
Does that apply to you as well? But you said it doesn't.
It absolutely does not. In my 20s, in your 20s, you think you're young and invincible. So I probably never went in my 20s. But when the 30s hit, I said I really need to start, going to have an annual physical. And I've been dedicated to that, since then. I have been blessed that overall, until recently, I have been doing pretty good health wise. Yeah. And, but yeah, I think it's important because the other thing is, Samantha, is that I function as a caregiver for two of my family members, my late grandmother and my late uncle. And being their caregiver, it really gave me the insight to dealing with, doctors and dealing with nurses and dealing with nursing homes and dealing with hospitals and reviewing invoices and making sure that the invoices were accurate, because a large part of my career was working in the insurance administration. So I could definitely look at an EOB, and if I see inaccurate information there, I'm like, okay, what is this charge? Why is this on here? And also just being an advocate for them. And so I think, because I was so involved in particular, my late grandmother's healthcare and seeing after her, then it has made me acutely aware of what's going on with myself as well.
Wow, that's excellent. And being a caregiver is definitely something that many men don't often do.
Correct.
So that's excellent that you were able to step in that role
Yes.
for your family members. And so now you already know what to look for yourself.
Absolutely.
So that's
Absolutely.
excellent.
Yes.
So what happened during your routine doctor's visit in July?
Yeah. So recently I started doing semi-annual check-ins with my primary care physician. And one of the things that happened in July, I like to have my do my lab work ahead of time. So I don't do the lab work the day of my doctor's visit, because I want to discuss my lab work with my primary care physician. And I do need to shout out Dr. Wayne Davis, my primary care physician. He is awesome with Spartanburg Health System. And when the lab work came back, and of course you get it on my chart, and I'm well versed in navigating my chart. And I was looking at everything, and in my chart, it trends it for the last few years. So you can look at how your work is trending. And the PSA level was very elevated. Last year, my PSA level was 1.28, and this year it was 7.55. And I was like, okay, what's going on with that? And so I was on my chart, getting ready to message my doctor. He messaged me. He said, hey, he's like, did you see your PSA level? I said, I did. And he said, don't get alarmed. He said, we'll wait 2 weeks, because he said there was a lot of things that can contribute to it being high. And he said, let's, make sure it's not a false positive. So 2 weeks later, we did another one, and it was still high. And then he said, now you need to go have an MRI done. And so later in July, we were scheduled for an MRI, and the MRI showed that there was the presence of cancer in several regions of the prostate. And then to confirm that, I had to have a biopsy in September. And of course, the biopsy came back that indeed I was positive for prostate cancer. So thus my journey began in July and continues to today.
Wow. So since your PSA indicator was abnormal, what was the process after that? I know you kind of talked about having a biopsy.
Yeah, so I think let me first and foremost speak to the men listening at this. You definitely need to have not only your doctor's visits, but make sure that when you go to your doctor's visits that you are getting your PSA checked and that you know what it means. I have talked to so many men after this, and I was talking to one guy just the other day, and he was like, I don't even know if my PSA has ever been checked. And he's in his 50s like I am. And I was like, dude, you better check. And so he pulled out my chart. He said, let's go to my chart. And he said, will you look with us? I said, oh, certainly. Yeah. And so he pulled up my chart, and he said, oh, yeah, here it is. And so his PSA was looking great. I wish mine looked that well. It was like point something. I was like, it's great. But I was just educating him. And that's what I want to do now, is help educate, bring awareness, become an advocate, for not only prostate cancer, but, this general health and wellness. But yeah, so after it was confirmed through the biopsy. But even before that, Samantha, I am a type of person, I like to own my own narrative.
Hmm.
And I know some things are out of my control, but as much as possible, I wanted to earn it. When I first got the news of the MRI results, I will be honest, even though as macho as they come,
Yes.
I broke down. I had an emotional meltdown. I went through all the stages of grief one day.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think so. But I had to quickly rebound from that. I was
Hmm.
like, okay, Ernest, you have this. This is what you need to do. And so I immediately started doing a lot of research.
Okay.
And I started going online. I started talking to a lot of guys from across the country just to kind of get their stories, because I knew
Yeah.
a lot of men, this has impacted a lot of men.
Yeah.
And I was just amazed at the feedback that these men were giving me. And they were giving me the good, bad, and the ugly of how to navigate this, which was very insightful. It was an element that I was getting from them that I wasn't necessarily getting from the medical field. And so one of the things, when my diagnosis came back, thankfully, I'm in the very early stages of this, which is great. And we ran some additional tests, which it does not seem to be aggressive. So one of the things that they shared with me is that I have time.
Good.
And so they have given me 4 treatment options to evaluate and
Okay.
think on. And for me, I'm a Christian, so to pray on as well,
Yeah.
and say, what is the best path forward? Because as I am doing my research and talking to these guys and evaluating, a lot of the side effects I don't like.
Hmm.
This particular cancer hits men very intimately, and,
Hmm.
and a
Hmm.
lot of men don't like these side effects, and I don't either. So, and we'll
Yes.
probably talk about that later.
Yes.
But that's kind of some of the things that I've been doing since I've heard that. And even now, in the morning, I'm driving to Raleigh tonight after this interview because I have a medical consultation in Raleigh. So I'm not only doing it in my area, I'm kind of, talking to other areas as well. And just kind of, I want to make sure that make the best informed decision for
Hmm.
me, because you could talk to all the people, but this is me, it's my
Right.
body, and I've got to do what's best for Ernest. So yes.
Absolutely. Well, you said some things that I kind of want to touch
Yes.
on. One, you admitted that you had a little breakdown.
Yes, I did.
And I think it's important that men know it's okay to cry.
Mhm.
It's okay to feel those feelings.
Mhm.
You don't have to always be tough and
Yes.
strong. That mental health is real.
Yes.
And, when something life changing or life
Mhm.
altering happens,
Mhm.
it's okay to acknowledge it.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm glad that you had that moment.
Yes.
And then I also like that you're being proactive for your life, for your health. And
Absolutely.
you live in South Carolina,
Yes.
but you're seeking options in North Carolina.
Absolutely. And Georgia.
And Georgia.
Yes.
Okay. So
Absolutely.
and so I think that's important that we don't just rely on the doctors.
Yes.
We need to
Absolutely.
make sure that we are advocating for ourselves,
Mhm.
for our health, and with the information highway, the internet, Google, we
Yes.
have so much
We do.
at our fingertips.
Yes.
So we can't be, lackadaisical or put the burden on our doctors or our providers. Like
Absolutely.
ultimately, it's your life.
Yes.
And so you can't just expect them to do it all or, rely on them to fully check every box.
Mhm.
You have to take some ownership in it as well. So, you're a shining example of, what you should do,
Mm.
In a process. And let's say you weren't having those semi checkups because, for those who may not know, that's twice a year.
Yes. Mhm.
You might not have known
Absolutely.
until next year.
January. Yeah.
But now of course, this year and you're able to be proactive. So there's a lot of nuggets. So I hope everyone's paying attention,
Hopefully so. Yes.
men and women,
Yes.
for the, men in your life, women, make sure they're knowing what their PSA levels are
Absolutely.
and getting things checked because we can't take our health for granted. We
Absolutely.
have to definitely, we can have a clean bill of health this year
Yes.
or this month. And, God forbid, something can trigger in our genes
So
and
true.
whatever environmental factors
Yes.
and, something can happen overnight.
Absolutely.
So I love that. And also I'm noticing the blue ribbon.
Yes.
Is that the color for prostate cancer?
It certainly is. And that's one of the things as I've been navigating this journey. I want to represent all my brothers who are going through. So I got your back. I have my
Yes.
blue ribbon on. I'm dressed in my navy and blue. And then
Okay.
also I joined in Greenville. There's a national organization called Zero Cancer.
Okay.
And then we have a Zero Prostate Cancer support group in Greenville.
Okay.
So we meet the third Tuesday of every month. And I have my little wristband representing that. And it's just so important, again, that locally I have an in-person support group
Absolutely.
that I can come to, that we can talk to. And they've been so very helpful because right now I am the only one going through it. The rest of them are survivors. So
Oh,
they,
okay.
when we met last week, they were just so very helpful and sharing with me, giving such great insight. And again, like I said, this cancer, prostate cancer, hits men very intimately. So there's a lot of very intimate details that you have to talk about.
Mhm.
And they were just so open. I was like, wow, it was almost TMI. I was like, oh wow, but it was great
Wow.
to hear that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, awesome. So I love that you're getting that support,
yes,
and you don't know what's out there until you look.
so true.
So we got to be willing to look for the information,
Yes,
not expect it to fall on our laps.
so true.
And so you kind of touched on it, but how did you react to the reality of your prostate cancer diagnosis?
Yeah. So, like I said, you definitely go through the stages of grief, and one of those stages in grief is denial. And so, the thing about me, and to this day, I feel fine, and I thank God for that. I
Yes.
feel 100% like Ernest has always felt, and I have still do everything that I normally do. Still very active. My lifestyle has not changed. I still travel. I still work out. I still play sports. My appetite is great. So I thank God that I have not had any negative physical, you know, effects of
Good,
this
good.
cancer. But that's the deceiving thing about prostate cancer. Prostate cancer is known as the silent killer. And what doctors and medical, people will tell you is that when you do start feeling all of these effects, it's too late. That means you're in an advanced stage. So I thank God that it was caught early, but also thank God that I'm not dealing with, because when you hear cancer, you immediately think of the worst image comes to your mind. And even
Yes.
when I heard it, the worst thing came start flooding my mind. That's why I just kind of lost it there for a while. So wait a minute, Ernest, you're feeling good? I
Hmm.
think I'm looking pretty good. Hey, let's own this. Let's
Yeah.
do what you need to do to fight this. And this cancer doesn't have a clue what fight it's up against with Ernest Jefferson. I tell
Right, right. And I think it's all about terminology of what we say to
Yes, yes,
ourselves. You don't have cancer,
yes,
or cancer doesn't have you.
yes.
You just are temporarily dealing with
Yeah,
this,
absolutely.
just like someone has a headache.
Yes.
This is a temporary situation. That's
Mhm.
what we have to tell
Yes,
ourselves.
yes.
So we don't need to take on that victim
So true.
mindset.
A and one of the things I want to say to that is so very true, because I think we all deal with it differently.
Right.
And certainly as I've talked to certain men, and certain men have talked to me, they was like, "We are just amazed at how you're dealing with this.
Mhm.
They said, "We see you on social media still do." I said, "Yeah, I'm still living my life."
That's right.
Um, you know because I'm a Christian, there is a scripture, and Jesus says, "I come that you may have life and have it more abundantly."
Mhm.
And so I am holding to that. I'm
That's
still,
right.
even fighting cancer, I'm still going to have the abundant life and live the
Amen.
abundant life. And I'm not going to live anything short of that.
Right.
And I know, because of my faith, that is paramount for me, that, God is going to see me through this. He's going to heal me of this,
Hmm.
but also he's going to use this to give me a greater testimony
That's
and be a
right.
witness and a light for him, and to give him glory and praise for how he's going to deliver me and heal me from this. And so I think that is so very important that I do that and honor him throughout this process as well.
Absolutely. Definitely being a man of faith.
Mhm.
And that's the key difference. Many people don't have that faith or have
Yes,
that understanding. And once you have that, then you're not fighting alone.
absolutely.
So that's
Absolutely.
excellent. So I want us to discuss the impact of
Mm.
prostate cancer emotionally,
Yes.
financially,
Mhm.
mentally, spiritually. We kind of talked about that, and physically.
Yes. So any illness impacts you in all of those areas. And so, one of the things that I had to, first and foremost, again, to make sure that I'm spiritually grounded, you know, so that means I'm staying in my word,
Yes.
keeping my prayer life active, keep going to church, keep my involvement in ministry. So that's all that has helped me to continue to,
Yes.
fight this and deal with this and have the right perspective.
Mm.
But I think when you talk about your mental health, one of the things through my employer, one of the benefits is that we have access to a therapist.
Okay.
And so one of the things I did when I first heard about this in July, I reached out to the benefits team at work and I said, hey, I was like, this is potentially what I'm dealing with. I was like, go ahead. I want to know what are my options? What are my
Mm.
benefit options? And so they sent me all of this information. And of course, and I knew about the employee wellness program. And so I was able to sign up for therapy sessions. And so anytime that, even though I thank God for a supportive church family, my family is certainly great friends. I think sometimes it may be good to have the ear of someone who has been trained to listen at that. So I do have a therapist on standby whenever I need them,
Hey.
and when I need to talk to them about it. One of the things though, Samantha, that rarely gets discussed about this is the financial impact. And I was just because I've been blessed not to have any major, health issues. And so, aside from, paying, co-pays, uh, really had going through this, I was like, my God, I was like, I got to pay what? And even though I'm employed full time, I have great insurance. Um, in the matter of 2 or 3 months, my out of pocket expenses have been in the thousands of dollars.
Wow.
And I was like, my God. And I was like, so individuals who don't have insurance, what do
Exactly.
you do? So one of the things that I did again in talking with the benefits team at work, understanding my benefits, things, and even other policies and things that I have outside of work, I had to do some research and say, okay, if you're diagnosed with a critical illness, which cancer is considered critical illness, what benefits are available to you? And how can that assist you financially? And thankfully, one of the policies I had does provide financial assistance. I was like, hey, thank
Good.
God. And
Yeah.
so I think you have to realize what you have and what you have available to you. But what I will say to other individuals that may not have a policy like I had, you have the American Cancer Society and all these cancer networks who normally have money and resources to give to individuals who are going through cancer. So I would just say, be your own best advocate.
Mhm.
Um, you got to do the groundwork, you got to do the research, you got the network to find out what is available to you because even many people, you being a pharmacist probably know this, but I'm sure you know this as a pharmacist, many people who have these medications that cost thousands of dollars. A lot of times
Mhm.
they find grants and stuff and
Absolutely.
you don't have to pay anything for
Right.
it. So again, for me, I was fortunate to have this policy that was able to help me financially. But again, I think people need this network to see there's a lot of agencies out there that can help people who are going through cancer or any type of illness. So I think that is very, very important. And physically, Samantha, I think again, it was important for me to maintain my physical regimen. So,
Mhm.
like I said, I'm still working out at the gym. I'm going harder, if anything, at the gym now.
Okay.
I'm still hiking,
Mhm.
which I love to do because hiking not only helps you physically,
Yes.
but mentally.
Yes.
It just being out in nature, looking
Yeah.
at God's handiwork. I'm just at total peace when I'm hiking.
Yeah. Fresh air.
That's why I hike so much.
Yes. Yes.
And so I think in all those areas. I think that you have to understand that impact. But one of the things that I do want to talk about, because a lot of men don't like to talk about this, but I'm going to bring it up,
Mhm.
is that, and this is part of physically, there is certainly a sexual impact to this disease.
Okay.
And so I think we need to talk about that because, first and foremost, when I had my biopsy, and as I was preparing to have my biopsy, they warned me that the side effects that I was going to see blood,
Wow.
that I was going to see blood in my urine and blood in my semen. And
Mhm.
they was like, don't be shocked. They said it could happen for a matter of weeks, up to 6 weeks after this happened. And so, of course, no man wants to see that or hear that.
Oh no.
But here I was, dealing with that.
Yeah.
And when I talk to a lot of guys, they said the same thing. It kind of freaks you out when you see that. But I think think it's important that you have an awareness, that you plan for that and kind of
Yes.
understand, but also a lot of the treatment options. So, with prostate cancer, certainly there's radiation, there's the prostatectomy where they remove the entire prostate.
Mhm.
There's radiation options, there's focal therapy, and even I'm talking to one group about a holistic treatment as well.
Okay.
And I think with a lot of these, especially radiation and prostatectomy, there is a lot of impact to men sexually, where you have impotence for a
Mhm.
while.
Mhm.
And sometimes there is incontinence that people have to deal with.
Okay.
And for guys who have the prostatectomy, the entire prostate removed, that means that they have what is called dry ejaculation, that they no longer produce semen. And I
Mm.
think you have to understand that. So me, as a 53-year-old who still has not had children, to my mother's dismay, you know, part of my planning is like, even though I haven't prioritized having children and having a family at 53, I don't know what I'm waiting on, but is to talk to a fertility clinic because
Mm.
I may need to have my sperm preserved.
Okay.
And so I think all this stuff needs to be discussed and men need to be aware of that. So again, I want to bring awareness, things that are normally swept on the rug. I'm not going to sweep them under the rug.
That's right.
I'm a person, I'm going to take the bull by the horns and I'm going to talk about it. Even though they're uncomfortable, even though you don't want to,
Right.
discuss it, it needs to be discussed. And I thank God for the many men who also have opened up to me, have been so open in talking about how this have impacted them,
Mhm.
in particular, their sex lives. And so that was very important to hear from them, to understand how the different treatments impacted them. And even though they're not, with the exception of the prostatectomy and the dry ejaculation, some with the impotence, it's kind of a temporary thing, but
Right,
they
right.
wanted you to know and understand that these are the impacts. And certainly the physicians, the medical team, they will tell you if you press them, because when I went to them, I was armed with my notes. I had my iPad, I had printouts. I was like, okay, let's talk about this and let's talk about what does this
Right.
mean. So yes,
I'm glad you brought up about the medications, like being a pharmacist. I know many drug companies also offer programs to
yes,
help with the cost of medications.
yes,
And so even if you don't have insurance or don't have money, they have those things in place. So, you definitely said a mouthful about all the things that come with it that many
absolutely,
people don't even acknowledge or really think about because you
yes,
don't have a reason to,
absolutely,
especially with the physical issues that men have and that can affect their spouses
yeah,
or even if you want to be a parent, father one day. So it's a lot to consider with choosing treatment
yes,
options. So thank
absolutely,
you for breaking down all the aspects emotionally, financially, mentally, spiritually, and physically
yes.
what individuals go through with prostate cancer.
Mm.
So, how important is it to have the support of your circle of family and
Oh
friends?
my God, I can't say enough about the importance of your circle.
Yeah.
And times like these reveal who your true circle is.
Mhm.
Because when the sun is out and
Yes.
things are going well, everybody is in your corner.
Right.
But when you're going through,
Mm.
that's a different journey. And of course, when I first found out about this, I knew I had to tell my immediate family, and it was I had to drive down to my parents, and it's about an hour's journey from where I live, and I was
Mhm.
dreading it the whole time because
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to tell my parents this because my father, he's a cancer survivor.
Okay.
He survived a colorectal cancer, praise God,
Mhm.
and he's doing well to this day. So I knew we as a family had been through this before, but also remember how tough it was because he was in a late stage, and it's only by the grace of God that he's still with us.
Right.
And so, and in particular, I knew my mother how she was going to react,
Right.
and so I kind of just randomly showed up to their house in the middle of the day. So they immediately knew something was wrong because I should have been at work. And over here I am showing up at the house. I had called my sister. She was at work. I said, hey, can you join us on a conference call as I talked to my parents? And she was like, yeah. And so I
Mhm.
had to kind of break down to them. And of course it was, we had some emotions, going through that. But of
Right.
course, that group, my parents and my sister, of course, that they're always in my corner no matter what.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I just have just a great my pastor
Hmm.
at St. Mark United Methodist Church in Taylor. Shout out to the 911,
Right.
Dr. Carlton McClam. I told him, and even back in July, he immediately this was so encouraging
Hmm.
to me, of course, encouraging me with scripture, but also encouraging me. He was prophetically speaking to me about what
Mm.
God is going to do with me through this journey.
Wow.
And so I just thought that was amazing. And then of course when I finally went public, of course all of my church family knew when I went public on social media. Everybody was kind of shocked to hear that, but they've all been just so supportive.
Hmm.
And also just having great friends such as yourself, which I
Thank
told you
you.
earlier on because we've been friends for a long time.
Yes.
And this I told all my friends they have just been so great and encouraging and sharing and uplifting. And so I always check your circle, and
Yes.
I always say that we oftentimes I'm a huge fan of Dr. Darius Daniels, and he has a book called Relational Intelligence.
Hmm.
And one of the things he talks about that people in your circle or your friends are purpose partners, and having the right friends can help push you towards your purpose, and having the wrong friends can detract and hold you back from your purpose. So
Hmm.
you need to check your circle and make sure that they are for you, and that they're praying for you, that they have your back, and that they're with you through thick and thin. And so oftentimes that's not the case. But in my
Right.
case, I'm incredibly blessed to have such a strong circle.
And that's amazing. And I want to touch a little bit on that as well, because you have some people, they're there for the high moments,
Yes.
the birthday celebrations, the good times.
Yes.
But, do you have someone to go to chemotherapy with you? Do
Absolutely.
you have someone, if you need a home cooked meal and not feeling your best?
Yes.
Those are the practical things that matter. And I think with Facebook and social media, we got 5,000 friends and 10,000 friends. So
Yes.
I think some people get confused, or they mistaken that high friend count
Yes.
to be real friends. But do you have people you can call on if you really need something?
Absolutely.
And 9 times out of 10, that huge friend list on Facebook and Instagram, those people are not going to come to your rescue.
True.
So I think that's very important for us to, I think you said, check your circle,
Yes.
but don't check it when there's a tough moment. You
No.
want to be checking it in the good times,
Absolutely.
and already have that, set up.
Yeah.
So, not if, bad times come, but when
Man.
things happen,
Mhm.
you already have that in place.
Yes.
And so I also like to encourage people, be the friend that you would want to have.
Yes.
So it's not also about just checking your circle, but making sure that you're there for your friends.
Absolutely.
Do you return phone calls?
Absolutely.
Do you show up to parties or events? Do you make that sacrifice? Because
Mhm.
sometimes, yeah, it isn't easy always
So
or
true.
convenient to be a friend or a supporter, but are you being that person for other people?
Yes.
So when something happens, it's not even a question. You already have that in place, and they want to help you because you've been a help to them.
Yes.
So I wanted to,
Absolutely.
throw that
And
in.
and one of the things you talked on about social media and the term friend, and that term is certainly used too loosely in social media. I think instead of calling your friends, I think it should be your Facebook associate because they're
Right.
certainly not true friends for the most part. I mean, we
Right.
may
Right.
have some genuine friends that we also are friends with on social media, but we have to be very careful of that term because
Right.
they're not true friends, I guess.
No, definitely not. And, in what ways has prostate cancer changed your life?
Yeah. So, like I said, I have been blessed that right now I have not had any physical issues, so that has been a blessing. Like I said, I wouldn't know anything is wrong with me had I not known for all the medical results that have come back. I would say what has changed is that I have certainly become an advocate for this because anything that I go through, I know that I'm going through for a reason. And so, as in my prayer time, God was making it very clear that I wasn't just going through this for me.
Hmm.
Now I need to be a voice for other men. I need to be an advocate. I need to bring awareness to this disease that impacts so many. And so I certainly want to do that. So already I had my first Zoom meetup last month.
Okay.
where I wanted to bring this awareness, let men come together, let men talk. But the other thing, I'm just talking to men one-on-one. I've been blessed that men from across the country are reaching out to me. I've been encouraging them, they've been encouraging me,
Right.
and we've been sharing resources. And if I see somebody post something about their being down, then I encourage them,
Mhm.
and I say, hey, let's not go down that
Right.
hole. Let's stay up. Let's
Yes,
support each
yes.
other. Let's get out and think positive. And so I think it's important that we do that. Samantha, I think the other thing that has definitely changed is that I'm certainly not accustomed to going to the doctor so much. I said, "Oh my God,"
Right.
I'll turn into my grandmother, and I was like,
Yeah.
I just not accustomed to having all of these doctor's appointments and having so much to manage on my chart. But here we
Mhm.
are, and like I
Right.
said, by me being that caregiver for my grandmother in particular, where I manage her health care, certainly it has trained me to
Right.
be well equipped to manage my very own. So I'm out there navigating my chart across several different medical groups and
Mhm.
making sure that I'm staying on top of everything and understand what's going on. So that's been the biggest thing. Like I said,
Mhm.
becoming an advocate, becoming a voice, but also this getting accustomed to all the doctor visits and
Mhm.
consults that I have to do, and I haven't even started treatment yet. I
Right.
probably will not decide on a treatment option until I'll give myself to the end of this year, and
Okay.
then probably in 2026 I will make that decision and start on my journey of whatever treatment option that's going to be.
Right, right. And I love that, you're expressing, the changes because this is, real life.
Hmm.
And I like to think of it as seasons.
Yes,
Life has different seasons.
yes.
And we never know what that season is gonna look
Hmm.
like from
Hmm.
time to time. But as long as you have your faith, you have your family, your circle,
Yes,
and have the knowledge to make the right decision or to, arm yourself with what you need,
yes,
then I think you can go through things better
absolutely.
because the fact that you're able to not have to rush, but
Hmm.
you're in a position where you're able to make that decision after having time to seek out medical advice from different areas. That's a blessing, in and
Yes,
of itself.
it is.
And then the fact that you're wanting to be an advocate,
Hmm.
many people go through things and they shut down,
Yes,
they hide, they go through depression. And I'm not knocking that
no,
because that is a life changing
it is. It
situation.
is.
But the fact that you want to be an advocate goes back to what you said earlier.
Mhm.
When we go through things, especially as people of faith,
Yes.
when you go through stuff, that's a test for you to have a testimony.
So true.
And if you didn't have a test, then you wouldn't have a testimony.
So true.
And that mess can help make a message.
Yes.
And so you're able to arm yourself and arm others.
Mm.
If you didn't have this cancer diagnosis, would you have taken on this charge per
Ab
se to be an advocate for
absolutely.
prostate
Yeah,
cancer?
and that's what we know. I mean, again, I think, when you are presented with any life issue, I think you have to do some soul searching yourself
Yes.
and say, "How am I gonna handle this? Am I just in it for me, and am I just trying to get myself better?" Which certainly that has to be the point. You wanna get
Right.
yourself better, but
Absolutely.
again, me being a Christian and me being the person that I am, I know there's a greater call and
Mhm.
there's a greater purpose in anything that I go through. And I have to seek God for that. And certainly God made it abundantly clear that I need to be an advocate. I need to be a voice for this. And for example, there was one guy in particular I was talking with online. And when I went public, because I went public not only on my social media page, but in a lot of groups I'm in, and some of them, one of the guys he responded in that group, and he was like, he said, I admire that
Mm.
you were able to do this. He said, I can't. He said, I'm a father of two daughters. And he said, I don't want to appear weak before them. And my
Oh,
heart went out to him. I said, look, brother, I said, I understand, the dilemma that you're in as a husband, as a father. But I said, I said, you still need someone to talk to. And I
that's
was like,
right.
you can't go through this alone. So I said, please reach out anytime.
Mm,
And I'm there. I'm an ear, even though I'm going through it as well, but I'm
mm.
there if you want to chop it up as we
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
And I think that's very important that men just need to hear that
Mhm.
I'm not in this alone. And so many times we do shut down. And as men, a lot of times we do try to be a lone ranger. And I
Mhm,
certainly
mhm.
have been guilty of that in the past. But for this, I am really saying, okay, not only am I going through this, but I want to help others, but also I want to seek the advice and the information from others as well.
Absolutely. And so we kinda touched on it already, but What is your perspective on advocacy as it relates to prostate cancer?
Yeah, and not only prostate cancer, but I'm just thinking in general. First and foremost, we have to be our own best advocates.
Yes.
I can't say that enough. No one is going to look out for you like you,
That's
and
right.
so that's very important.
That's
We
right.
have to be our own best
Mhm.
advocates. And so, as I am going through this, while I get good feedback from my parents and good feedback from my family and my church family and those who I feel generally have my best interest at heart.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, I got to do what's right for me. I can't do what worked best for somebody else.
That's right.
I have to do with what I feel, and after I pray over it, because everything I'm going through, I definitely got to pray over it,
Right.
and whatever I feel in my spirit is the best path forward for me, then that's what I have to do. So advocacy is very important. And I think that people need to know that you have to have ownership of
Mm.
your health care and your wellness and your fitness. You have to take charge of that. And there are no excuses for it. You have to be responsible for
That's
you,
right.
and so you can't and and the other thing, with this cancer, you can't blame it on anything that I ate or lack of something. It just happens.
That's right.
And unfortunately, it disproportionately affects men of color,
Mhm.
unfortunately. And I think that's another thing that in our community we need to be aware of that.
Mhm.
And certainly if there are things, diet, that may contribute to that, then we need to watch our diets and anything that we can help improve or decrease the chance of us contracting this. But then I talked to some guys. I talked to one guy in the support group last week. He was like, my diet was great. He was like, I ate fruits and vegetables and did all the right things. He said, I still got it.
That's
So,
right.
so you never know.
You never
You just
know.
never know. So, but yeah, I think advocacy for me means self advocacy first, owning
Mhm.
your own narrative, owning your journey, but then also turning that around and say, okay, while I'm going through this in particular, what can I do to help others? How can I be a voice? What can I do? And even by doing that, people are reaching out to me. I just had someone this week. I was at the gym working out, and someone called me in Greenville, and wanted me to participate in something with I think it's the Neighborhood Cancer Connection,
Okay.
and they're having an event next month, so I'll be attending that. So I think there's things like that, whatever I can do. And I'm just kind of seeking ways now how
Mm.
I can be an advocate, get the word out, and just help other men who are going through this.
Wow, and I love that you said ownership. That
Yes.
is so huge because it's easy to blame other people.
Yes.
These are my parents' genetics, or
Yes.
it's the environment, or it's sometimes it is our diet.
Yes.
It's what they put in the food. But at the end of the day, like you said, there are people who don't have genetic
I know.
issues
I
or
know.
who ate perfectly
Yes.
and they still got it. So we can't control
Mm-hmm.
what's going to happen in our
So true.
lives.
So
We don't
true.
know what the future holds, but we have to take ownership and responsibility for our health ultimately.
Yes.
It's not the doctors. It's not, your family. It has to be you at the end of the day
Yes.
who's going to make the decisions, make the choices,
Yes.
and take action for
Yes.
your life and stop blaming,
Yes.
because it's
Yes.
easy to blame.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as you accept ownership,
Mm-hmm.
and like you said, you can turn it around. And then I think also when we take it off ourselves, like you said, how can I help somebody else?
Yes. Yes.
I think that's
It
important.
it certainly is, and one of the things I want to talk about as well is having a good primary care physician. I can't
Yes.
say enough about my primary care physician, Dr. Wayne Davis. One of the things that he is so good at, and I've been with him for many years now, is that he is first of all, he's a black man, and
Okay.
for me, it's just important to have a man of color seeing after my primary care. That's just important for
That's
me.
right.
And so one of the things that he is so good at, he holds you accountable for your own health. And I know when I come to his office, I better come correct. I better know what my chart says. I better know what my numbers are. And I'll never forget, I was on this particular medication a few years ago, and I came to his office
Mhm.
because I was trying to self-medicate, and because everything, my readings were doing fine. I was like, "Oh, I'm good. I don't have to take this medicine anymore." And I went to his office, and when they did, my, checking my numbers and stuff, something was elevated. And he was like, why are your numbers elevated? And I was like, well, I stopped taking this. I didn't think, he's like, don't you ever come to my office and say that again. And so I just love that because he holds me accountable. And I think we need that from our primary care physicians. We need people who care. And my grandmother, she had a dynamic primary care physician as well. And so we need primary care physicians who care, who are involved. And even as I was going through my prostate cancer journey, even though he referred me to the specialist that I'm now seeing, he told me, he was like, hey, I want to stay involved. He said, come back and see me. So recently, a couple of weeks ago, I had a visit with him where we just checked in with each other. He wanted to understand where I was at. Of course, he had access to my chart, but we just kind of dialogued about where am I at, what's going on, what's the best path forward. And he, made some recommendations about some things. So I appreciate the partnership that we have.
Wow.
Yes.
And that's so good that you have a doctor that you really are comfortable with and almost a friend with, because some people have doctors that they don't like. I've heard that so many times, like they don't listen to me or I don't understand when I leave. And I feel, let this be a service call to everybody. If you have a physician or a healthcare provider that you don't feel comfortable with, then you need to change.
Absolutely.
You want someone who values your health and who looks at your chart, like Ernest said, hold you accountable. That is so important.
Yes.
So if you have somebody, do not go into 2026 with a doctor or a nurse or whatever healthcare provider that you do not feel comfortable with talking about your health.
Yes.
Or, not even being honest. Because some people go to the doctor's office and they're not honest about what's going on.
So true.
And, the numbers don't lie. The labs are going to tell the truth anyway. But be honest and open, and you should feel comfortable with your doctor to do that. And if you don't, then you need to make a change.
So true. Yeah, I agree.
Yes. My next, question is, many people keep their personal health private.
Yes.
So why are you so public about your prostate cancer journey?
Yeah, especially in the Black community. Don't we do that?
Yes.
We want to keep everything under the rug or hush hush, and we don't talk about this. And I, when I knew that when I found out about this in July, I knew that I had to live it out loud, so to speak. I knew that I had to go public with it. And I had told my family because my parents and my sister, they are not on social media, and they're, I'm kind of opposite them,
Right.
and so they were kind of concerned that I was going to be so public with it. And even some of my friends were like, are you sure you want to go public with something so personal? I said, yeah. I said, I need to. And because, people see me in the public eye doing so many different things, I operate in so many arenas and circles, it was important for me to get that word out. And so I didn't do it immediately. I had to, I waited a couple months after I knew what was going on. But then I said, okay, after a couple months of dealing with this, I said it was time. And during that time, I had reached out to you as well because I said, hey, I also want to do an interview about this because I'm serious about being an advocate and bringing awareness, to prostate cancer. So to me, it's this, we have to talk about, we have to have a discussion. When you talk about it, it opens up the door for dialogue, and people who are going through alone may hear something and say, okay, so I'm not the only one going through this.
Right.
And I'm not the only one impacted by this. And there are resources and there are other people and there are other groups. And that's why I've encouraged all men that I've talked to make sure they check their region that they live in, look up, the Zero Cancer Group or any other cancer support group, and make sure that you join an in-person support group or a virtual support group, but make sure that you're part of a group. And again, for me, you just couldn't keep this quiet. And I was so encouraged by the number of men, again, Samantha, that were coming to me who were so transparent about what they were going through and how this had impacted them in such an intimate way. I was like, I can't be silent about this either. I need to help others. And so that's how I live my life. I live a life of service and helping others. And this is my way of helping others.
Right. And it's no right or wrong way to handle it.
Yes.
If you want to, keep it quiet, that's fine. I know of people who go through breast cancer and they wait till after the treatment, after they ring the bell, and then they choose to share it. So however you choose to share your story is your business.
Yes.
But I think it's important for your family because many people have children and they don't disclose their medical conditions or grandmother, uncle, cousin, different things. And so the next generation doesn't know what's in their family tree.
Yes.
And that's how doctors make treatment, or that's how they know how to start certain screenings at a certain age based off your family history.
So true.
So it's no need to have shame on it, but definitely you want to share, at least with your family, if nothing else, about what's going on. But if you can help people in the community or even in the world as yourself, that is very helpful as well.
And again, I think that's important what you said, because and I understand and I appreciate that everybody doesn't have a platform like I have. I have a very public platform.
Yeah.
So for me, I could not, stay silent in such a public platform, because I was like, God did not put me in these places and spaces just to be silent. He gave me this big mouth for a reason, so I need to use it to affect positive change. So yeah.
And I think also that's why many people don't like social media, because people tend to show the highlight reel.
Yes.
They only show the good moments, the happy moments, but they don't show what's really happening when there's not so good moments or when there's diagnosis. And if it's supposed to be reality TV or, the real world or social media, then I'm not saying you got to tell all your business,
So true.
but or not have tact with how you present the information. But let's, be, honest. If you want to have a public platform, if you want to share all the happy moments, then if you're having a bad day, why not be honest and say, I'm having a bad day, or, things are not going well in my health, or if you need prayer, be open to asking for that.
So, and it's important that you said that, because the way I chose to go public on social media on my Facebook page, it was a certain picture that I took. So after or before, it was before my biopsy in the hospital, my parents were in the room with me, and we were talking, and I said, hey, I said, get my phone. I was like, let me take a selfie. I took a couple of selfies. They was like, why are you taking a selfie? Because, I had the bag over my head, and I had the gown on, and, I was looking rough, but I said, I think I'm going to use this for something. And I wasn't sure what I was going to use it for. And when I went public, I was like, this is the picture I need to use. So my parents were there, which showed I had support.
That's right.
But also people saw me in a different light, because they're not used to seeing me that way. But I had a smile on my face.
That's right.
And one of the things that one of my good friends, he tells me, he was like, you're certainly redefining what it looks like for a person to go through cancer. And I was like, that's what I'm after, because I want to redefine the narrative of what it means to live with cancer and ultimately defeat cancer.
That's
but
right.
while I'm going through it, I'm going to be as positive as I can be, helping others along the way, but also encouraging others as well.
Wow. That's good, because we don't have to look like what we're going through.
Absolutely. Yes.
You can have a lot going on, but you
Yes.
can still find a reason to smile because you're still
Absolutely.
here.
Yes.
You're still fighting. And so, yes, I love that. Redefining what cancer looks like, or
Yes.
redefining having a diagnosis
Yes,
that you may not,
absolutely.
want,
Absolutely. Yes.
So, wow,
Absolutely.
that's very powerful.
Yes.
And I understand that you have spoken to men, like you've mentioned, both locally and nationally,
Yeah.
who are prostate cancer survivors. How has that been of assistance to you? I think you've talked about it.
Yes, it has certainly been invaluable, because it's difficult sometimes to get us as men to open up and
Yes.
to talk.
Mhm.
And especially, like I said, with this particular cancer impacting us so intimately,
Mhm.
especially sexually,
Mhm.
that's a tough ask. And
Yes.
so I have just been amazed at the number of men who have said, yep, this is what I dealt with. This is what I went through. This was the side effects of the treatment options. This is how
Mhm.
long it impacted me. And even several guys and their wives have spoken to me about how it impacted
Wow.
them and their lives. And one guy in particular, I have to say this. Of course, I won't call his name, but one guy he said that he told his wife, what the treatment option he had chosen. and that he was going to go through this particular treatment option. And he said for fear that he would not be the same sexually after that he was before, he said he disclosed that to his wife. And he said his wife came back and said, "Sweetheart, you wasn't that good anyway."
Oh, wow.
That was hilarious. And I just thought, but it was just a light moment that we were able to share. And I just thought that was so funny. And I think for me, and again, to be so transparent about something that's so intimate, I think it's been very helpful to me. And like I said, not only have I spoken to prostate cancer survivors, but also those who are going through with me as well. So we've been kind of chatting with each other, encouraging each other. Say, hey, well, are you dealing with any side effects? And no, I'm not. Are you dealing with something? Yeah, I'm dealing with this. But it's just kind of helpful to understand, and then also to understand what our medical care team is telling us. We're comparing notes. Saying, why did your care team, because I got kind of jealous. I was talking to one guy in California. He was like, his care team did this. I was like, I'm making a note about this. And ask my care team, why did we do this? So it's important that you just have this tidbits of insight and resources that you normally wouldn't have. So yeah.
And I'm glad you said that, because exactly, you want to know every possible option.
Absolutely.
And so it's good if you're in a silo or by yourself, not talking and not sharing information. You don't know what's out there.
And one other thing I want to share too, because it's so important. There was this dear elderly gentleman at my church, and he came up to me. He said, "Hey," he said, "I heard you have prostate cancer." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "I'm a prostate cancer survivor." I was like, "I never knew that." And he said, "I just want to encourage you through this journey." But he was like, so many of us as men, he said, we kind of want to ignore that we even have this. And he said, a lot of men are not doing like you. They're not being advocates and not being proactive about this. He said, "I want to encourage you to continue to do what you do." And he said, so many men are so concerned about preserving their sex lives that they won't have this cancer treated. But he's like, if you're not alive to have sex, it's not going to matter anyway. And that was so insightful. I was like, you are spot on. So it's very important. So guys, if you want to continue to enjoy your sex life, you got to make sure you deal with your prostate cancer as well.
Right. You want to be alive to be able to get some action. That's very true. And so what are your next steps as you navigate this prostate cancer journey, and how can viewers stay in contact with you and even offer support?
So the next steps for me, from now to the end of the year, I will continue to do my research. And I will continue to do consultations about the treatment options. So this week I have a consultation with a certified herbalist. And we're going to talk about diet and talk about supplements that may be able to assist. I have a consultation with a Duke Health System next month, and we're going to talk about the focal therapy option. And again, I also have a consultation with Emory in Georgia, and we'll talk about options. So again, I'm continuing to do research. I'm continuing to do the medical consultations, and all the while, I will continue, because right now, I guess I'm in what is called active surveillance. And so that is an option that they told me that I could pursue. And active surveillance just means that they will actively continue to monitor me and monitor, make sure the cancer is not spreading or doing anything that it shouldn't be doing. And so I will regularly stay in contact with my medical team to make sure that I'm good. But like I said, through the end of the year, I will continue to do research and do the consultations. I will decide on a path forward next year. Don't know what that is, because I got to pray about all of this.
That's right.
It's almost information overload. It can be overwhelming as well. So, but I've just got to pray about it, kind of look at it. And one of my one of my specialists, he did an outstanding job at helping me break it down. He kind of made it so simple and charted everything out and kind of did put things in quadrants so I would really understand. He did this test called the Altera test to kind of do a projection of where I'm at with my cancer and what it's likely to do based off of everything that they've seen. And so
Mhm.
that was so very helpful with me as well. So, and again, I will continue to be an advocate as doors open for this new arena of my life, like I need something else to do, but I will continue to be an advocate and kind
Right.
of help raise awareness and just bring light and a voice to this prostate cancer.
Right. And I just want to mention that because you started early, you're able to do
Yes,
this.
absolutely.
If you are at the end,
Yes.
you don't know what's going on, and like
Yes.
you said, when you start having symptoms,
Yes.
it's too late usually.
It is, and that's what one of the specialists said. He said, "Look," he was like, "You're in a great spot." And
Mhm.
even he, I don't know if he knew he was prophetically speaking too. He said, "You're going to be healed." I said, "Well, I received that, brother." I said, "I
Okay.
know God's going to do that." He said, "You're
Right,
going to be
right,
healed." He
right.
said, "It's just a matter of which path you take to be healed." I was like, "Oh, I love it," and so, but he said, if it was so advanced, he said, we would not have given you any of these options. He said we would have thrown you in the hospital, yanked out your prostate, and and say,
That
hey,
was that.
and live your life. So I thank God that I have been proactive about my
Mhm.
health and that I do have options to consider. And then you also mentioned how can people stay in contact with me. So certainly I'm on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn. So just look up Ernest Jefferson and see what I'm up to next. So
Wow,
yes,
that's excellent. And I really, really thank you for one trusting me with this
absolutely.
and allowing me to be able to interview you because this was, new for what I'm doing. And so this was very, very a great conversation. And I'm glad that you were, comfortable enough to share this.
Well, and Dr. DeLoache, let me just say to you, like I said, we've been friends a very long time.
Hmm.
When I used to live in Charlotte, and we became friends when I shortly after I moved here because we were at the same church.
Right.
And so I just want to thank you for the professional that you are. You are a phenomenal woman. You do great things, and I think when I was going through this, and I was like, I need to put more of a voice to this. I was like, who can help me do this? And God said, reach out to Dr. Samantha DeLoache. That's when I gave you that call that day. And I said,
Yes.
hey, let's talk about something. And
Yeah,
you were
yeah.
just immediately, you were immediately sold. It was like, okay, we're going to do it. And you was like, we're not going to do it small. She was like, we're going to do this big. And I was like, as only Dr. DeLoache would do. So I
Right.
certainly appreciate your friendship, your support, and your prayers as well. You just
Yes.
sending encouragement. And it was good to see you other week at my church as well. So
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely. So, Ernest, again, thank you so much for your transparency, your strength, and for reminding us that even in the face of life's toughest battles, there's always room for hope and purpose.
Yes.
Your story will inspire so many to get checked, to stay proactive, and to keep fighting. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us for this very special in-person conversation. If you or someone you know has a story that deserves to be heard, I'd love to sit down with you. This platform was created to uplift voices, build connections, and remind us that every journey matters. Until next time, I'm Dr. Samantha DeLoache, reminding you to live boldly, speak truthfully, and always, always own your voice. Have a good night.